Hey everyone, it's Cosmo, and welcome to another memory card, the series where I talk about games I've been playing recently, or just show off something that I think is really cool. And today I want to talk about One Piece, 4Kids' One Piece. It's not great, and I've already talked about it at length in this other video here, but I only barely mentioned the video games that came out during the time when 4Kids owned the One Piece license. There weren't that many of them. There's a lot you can hate on 4Kids for when it comes to One Piece, but in their defense, this is a case where the blame doesn't fall entirely on them. They'd be in charge of localizing the games, but whether or not existing Japanese One Piece games would even be released in the West would fall more on the publisher of most One Piece games, Bandai, than it would 4Kids. And while One Piece didn't take off at the time like its contemporaries did, it's not like they never attempted to appeal to the Western market. As a matter of fact, let's start with one of the few One Piece games that was only released in North America. They brought One Piece to Game Boy. One Piece for the Game Boy Advance is a side-scrolling beat-em-up made by Dimps whose quality tends to vary, but this is one of the good ones. Because it came out in 2005 when 4Kids were still in Drum Island, it only follows the Straw Hats up to right before they enter the Grand Line. But you do play as Luffy and collect the rest of the East Blue 5. Unfortunately, you can't play as them, but you can call them for assist after you find them in whatever level you're in. I think the game has great sprite work. Luffy's super expressive, and I was impressed by how much versatility they gave him too. He can do his basic combos, he can Gum Gum rocket off of poles, he can float with Gum Gum balloon, he can do a couple of special moves with different inputs, and that goes for your assist too. This game even incentivizes you to replay it because it has alternate routes where you can find mini bosses and other hidden stuff. This isn't a very easy game either. It's not a nightmare, but don't go in expecting a cakewalk. You're gonna get shit on if you think you can just spam the same combo against these enemies. Pulling out your full Gum Gum Gatling combo is actually a trap in most cases because it locks you into an animation that makes you susceptible to damage. For most of these bosses, you'll have an easier time with them once you learn to stun lock them. And you probably will have a few game overs, but that's fine because you can just replay earlier levels to level up Luffy. This game tracks your score, or bounty, or whatever it's called, after each level, and once you pass certain milestones, they'll give you stuff like increased health. So if you're in trouble, just go back and play the earlier stages again. And check this out, Luffy calls Alvida a broad, which I was pretty surprised to see because that doesn't seem like something 4Kids would have approved. But this is something neat you'll see about One Piece games released during 4Kids' reign. Just dialogue that doesn't seem like 4Kids would have written in or left in the actual show.
One Piece! Grand Battle!
Let's move on and take a look at Grand Battle, the first game with actual voice acting. I suppose I should specify which Grand Battle I'm talking about as well, because there's a few games with this title. First, you have the Japanese PlayStation exclusive from TV Animation One Piece Grand Battle, and Grand Battle Swan Coliseum for the Wonder Swan, which is also a game that the Game Boy One Piece borrows some sprites from. You also have Grand Battle Rush, the fourth game released in the Grand Battle series, which is the Grand Battle we got over here, except they dropped the rush from the title, among other things. So this one is a 3D fighting game that sucks. It doesn't really suck, but the Western version is way inferior to the original Japanese. Tons of content was cut from this game. This was still released when 4Kids were in the middle of Drum Island, so no Aokiji, no post-Alabasta outfits, but at least we get an opening that uses the pirate rap with a special verse, and Goku is the announcer. That's kinda cool, I guess.
Final battle! Fight!
The game itself, this is more of a party fighter than anything that's meant to be taken seriously. The combat isn't anything that you haven't seen before. You have your main attack and then your secondary, and if you vary them, you can do different combos. What you're really going to be looking out for are these treasure chests and barrels that contain fruit, which level up your special meter, and they also have items that temporarily buff your speed or defense or whatever else. A lot of times it feels like the matches are decided by these items, which I'm not upset with. with. I like the chaos of having a bomb that you can toss at your friends. On top of all that, everyone has their own unique assist that they can call out to help them. It's not like a one-time attack thing either. Your summons linger on the battlefield for a while. So if you get someone in a nice position, maybe backed into a corner or something, you and your assist can just waste them. Here's something cool. There's a story mode in this game where you can play as any one of the Straw Hats, and before and after each battle, characters have unique interactions that lead up to the fight. It's pretty stupid stuff like Sanji and Usopp fighting over eggs, but I appreciate the effort of trying to give these battles a little meaning besides choose this character, and fight. Also, we get a bit more of that 4Kids voice acting, which is always a treat.
This is a mutiny, Luffy! I find you unworthy to be captain! I'm taking over!
Another really cool thing about this game is the art collection. I always talk about how I love it when a game has a feature that lets you look through the concept art or character designs or anything else like that. And that's here too. To a lesser degree. A lot of the art in this game's collection are just stills from the anime, but I still think it's nice seeing it all in higher quality. Some of this stuff would make for a nice desktop wallpaper. And just in case you wanted more proof that 4Kids localized this game, Sanji's cigarette is gone, and they removed Nami's cleavage from these shots of the Bon Voyage opening. Okay, next game.
Cool off in jail. Win!
You ready?
This is the sequel to Grand Battle, One Piece Grand Adventure, and as far as I know, it's the only other One Piece game that didn't see a release in Japan. Honestly, this game is just a lot of the same, but it's also a little bit more. We have an updated story mode with RPG elements, a digital card collection featuring hundreds of cards from the One Piece TCG, and also an expanded roster up to Skypiea, which means 4Kids got to dub characters that they never reached.
Now you'll pay!
I've never seen such disrespect!
How many One Piece games, not gachas, let you play as Quina? It's pretty cool. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I just imported someone else's completed save file because I didn't want to play through this game completely for this video, but I still put a lot more time into Grand Adventure than I did Grand Battle. I can't explain it well, but the combat felt a lot more responsive to me in this one, and it also felt more satisfying pulling off a combo. In Grand Battle, I felt like we were just running and hopping around everywhere, and I'd be lucky to land something. There is one change that I'm kind of iffy on though, the super secret attacks. Grand Battle had these too, where if you found a diamond and then did your super, you'd do an extended super secret version of it. But here you have to win or draw in a game of rock, paper, scissors to pull it off. I have never been a fan of when fighting games included features like this, and that's true for this game too. I guess the good news is you at least have a 2 in 3 chance of pulling it off, but I'd still rather be done with it altogether. The art returns as well, but they didn't have a huge gallery like before, just portraits of the characters and their different costumes. They have some really cool ones in here though. This is stupid. I didn't own this game as a child, but I think this could have been one I spent a ton of time playing, just trying to unlock everything and playing the little mini games. Grand Battle had these too, but I didn't think they were anything too special, just some fun little stuff to give you a break from all the fighting. But if you actually are someone who favors the mini games, then don't worry, because there's an entire One Piece game for you too. The final One Piece game I'm going to be talking about in this video is Pirates Carnival, One Piece Mario Party. Luffy wins by doing absolutely nothing.
All done, time to eat!
This game is very flawed, but I also think it has the most potential for fun. Being a 4Kids game, it lends itself to having a lot of moments where you can have fun mocking it. They all do, of course, but with this being a party game, they incentivize you to do it with friends.
I'm starting things off. I'm really gonna like this. Why is she a country hit, bro? Why is she like a...
That's about all the good I can say about this game though. It's not bad or buggy, but it's really not for me. I think some parts of it are poorly designed. The most apparent problem with this game is that the mini-games aren't that great. Some of them run too long, some of them don't play as well as they could, some of them are difficult to understand, but something you'll really start to notice once this game gets going is, it takes a really long time to finish just one board. In order to finish a game, you have to fill out all these tiles by playing the minigames, and whoever has the most money by the end wins. This is easier said than done though, because the game likes to pause itself with characters having these slow conversations before and after each minigame. There's also the fact that random events can happen where the characters on the tiles can revolt against you and you'll have to play their minigame over again to claim them. Maybe some of you will like the fact that the games run so long actually, but if you select one of the larger maps, you should really know what you're getting into here. If you play this game with me, we're only ever playing on the 3x3 baby board. I'd be more forgiving of this if the game didn't like to repeat so many of the same minigames, of which there aren't many. I've had multiple scenarios where we'd finish a minigame on one tile, the AI would make its move onto another tile, and when they were offered the choice of which minigame to play, they would select the one we just finished. As far as I'm concerned, they shouldn't even have the option.
Over already? Bummer.
In my opinion, the best thing about this game is the voice collection. Again, we get to look at even more characters who were never properly voiced in the 4Kids anime. But alright, I think that's a nice quick little look at all the One Piece games released during the 4Kids era. I didn't want to go too in-depth, but hopefully you got to see that there is some cool stuff in here. Actually, to say something that I really like about these games, there's only 2 fighting games. I've mentioned in the past how I'm not a fan of how the go-to genre for anime games is fighting. And yeah, it makes sense for a lot of shonen, a lot of battle shonen, but you know, you can always do more than just fighting. I mean, here we have a 2D side-scroller with more under the hood than you'd think, and a flawed but still pretty fun party game with friends. And that's not to say Grand Battle or Grand Adventure aren't fun because they're fighting games. Even they're doing something different because they're not traditional 1v1 fighters. But the fact that the other 2 were something else, I just feel like I gotta praise that because there's so many anime fighting games. By far the best thing to come from any of these games are the glances of 4Kids that we never got to see, the slightly more risque dialogue, the art from openings that they never showed, and voices for characters that the story never got to or just cut out. I'm still upset they completely removed Little Garden, and I also feel way more comfortable recommending any of these games over the 4Kids anime itself. If you're gonna check either of the 2 out, make it the games.